Hello everyone, I'm Neil and welcome back to Pixel Bender. Over the last few months I've been working on my original short film, The Awakening, and it's set in an Indian cyberpunk world. If you've been following my channel, you might have already seen glimpses on my live streams or the other videos that I've put out. And I'd love for you guys to join me along on this journey as we build The Awakening shot by shot. This control room is one of the key locations where the story begins, so it was important to get this right. As always, I started with reference images based on my script. I am no artist, so I used an AI to generate them. You can see the complete build of this control center from blocking to finished scene on some of the live streams I've done in the previous weeks. Also, I'm using F-Spy to set the camera angle. You can find the full video on the top right corner with the full steps to camera matching using F-Spy. Once that is done, you can save the F-Spy file and import it into Blender. And we have a perfectly matched camera to start blocking out the scene. I started by modeling primitive versions of the table and the room around it, and then added a simple area light just so I could visualize the scene better in rendered view. Locking the camera angle beforehand tells us exactly what the audience will see and won't see, so we can save a lot of effort. After the blocking was done, I started modeling the assets that we'd place around the room. First up was a huge wall of monitors from our reference and a wall mount to go along with it. And the next most identifiable feature from the reference is the window on the right. So I cut a section out and added some window grills to it. Added a glass material to the panes and just placed one of my city renders outside with an emission node to fake the vast city outside. Now since we're going to start adding the assets, I set up some preliminary lights. One area light shooting light from the outside city and some red warning lights to give us a feel of the scene. At this point it was also time to add one of my favorite things, a volume scatter cube. So I added a cube to cover my scene and added a volume scatter material with a very low density and high anisotropy. After tweaking the lighting a little bit, I moved on to modeling the remaining assets. Just some low poly drawers to place below our table. And now moving on to my favorite section, building assets the fast and efficient way. I learned this technique from the Blender legend Ian Hubert and his lazy tutorials. Rather than modeling every tiny surface detail, I just model low poly versions of the original objects. Try to stick to the right proportions because that will help save a lot of time when we are UV unwrapping and texturing the objects. I projected textures onto simple geometry from the camera's point of view. It almost gives us the same result at a fraction of the time. For a little more realism, I tweaked the roughness and the bump values of individual surfaces and gave them some nice variations. I've been obsessed with this method of modeling ever since I learned about it, and it may just be my most favorite way of modeling things in Blender. So I went ahead and modeled all the electronic props used in this scene with this same projection mapping method. You can see this console I made right here, this cool looking futuristic server stack, and even this futuristic walkie-talkie. And all of this just took me a couple of hours to model. Now I'm not diving deep into how I created the UIs for the screens in this scene because that is a whole other topic in itself. After placing some of the models that I designed earlier and adding the UI graphics, it was time to start adding the minute details. Things without which the scene wouldn't feel alive and lived in. Since we have a lot of electronics, the most obvious one was to add a bunch of cables, and I used Bezier curves and the draw tool to make these cables. Though I want to model all the major assets used in this short film by myself, it is physically impossible for me to model each and every small tiny detail. So then I scoured Sketchfab and BlenderKit to find some free models to populate the desks and add some lived-in details. Some scattered papers, a pen stand, a photo frame, a water bottle, a chair, etc. You can add any amount of detail that you wish to have in your scene, or rather the amount of detail your PC can handle. And the materials here are nothing special. I just found completely free materials on BlenderKit and free PBR and brought them into my scene. After adding a few more details here and there and applying all the materials, this is where we are at currently. Right off the bat, I noticed a few things. We need to fill the empty spaces because it looks very distracting, and maybe add some foreground clutter and depth of field to frame the scene better. This shot didn't start with a room full of computers or giant displays. It started with a completely empty space. Here's the entire evolution of the control room that we have about so far from the beginning. One of my favorite things about creating environments is watching them slowly come alive. Every version solved a different problem. Instead of trying to make the scene perfect on day one, I focused on improving one thing at a time. First the composition, then the modeling, then the screen graphics, lighting, materials, and so on. Now it was time to add the final sauce on top of it. The amount of detail you add depends on how much time you have and how close your camera is going to be to the subjects. Here is a previous video of mine showing how to make realistic screens. That means simulating the Moira effect that we get while recording screens with our digital cameras. The video is linked in the top right if you want to watch it. So then I added some realistic screen effects to the screens in the scene. They may not be visible in the wide shots, but in the close-ups, they will definitely make a difference. And I also added my character who is asleep at the beginning of this scene, which marks the calm before a storm, before all hell breaks loose. I added some scan lines to the second set of monitors as well. I'm not going for full photorealism, but I would like the visuals to stay rooted in reality to some extent. After this, I added the final details that I thought were missing. For example, blinds on the windows, some more gadgets and server racks in the background. Also foreground clutter, some of it blocking the screen and some wires crossing the far right of the screen. And depth of field focused on our character. And the lighting here is very simple as well. Instead of flooding the room with light, there are only the safety lights on the top and an area light which is shining on our subject who is asleep in the foreground. I also thought to show you this really cool free Blender add-on called Colorista. It's very convenient, it has a lot of settings built in, so you don't need to go into the compositor or use any nodes, and you can see all your changes reflect in real time in the viewport. I've made a full detailed video about using Colorista and how to install it in Blender. I've tagged it in the top right, you can check it out if you like. But if you're not going for a heavy stylized or filmic look, you can add pretty good color grading and effects like bloom and stuff right off the bat in Blender. This isn't just a single environment, it's one location inside a much larger story. Every week I'm building another piece of this world, from futuristic props to ancient temples surrounded by neon skyscrapers. If you'd like to follow the creation of this Indian cyberpunk universe from the very beginning, I'd love to have you along for the journey. And be sure to join my next live stream this coming Sunday at 9 PM IST, where I'll be starting to work on the next scene from The Awakening. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.